A judge in London, Ontario has ruled convicted killer Nathaniel Veltman did commit an act of terrorism. In 2021, he deliberately drove his pickup truck into a Muslim family of 5, killing 4 people. The case was the first time Canada's terrorism laws were put before a jury in a first-degree murder trial. CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick was in the court. She's now come outside, joins us now live from London. So set the scene for us. What happened inside that courtroom, Megan?
Well, Linda, at the outset of her ruling, Justice Renee Pomerance did give the headline, essentially, saying that she was making a finding that Nathaniel Veltman's crimes amounted to terrorism. She then said throughout her ruling she would not be naming Veltman, that she would refer to him as the offender. She said this was in an effort to reduce the likelihood that the courtroom, the ruling would be used as a platform to share his racist ideology, the kind of ideology that spawned the killings in the first place. Now, she said this was perhaps a symbolic move, but she said symbolic moves are important. When she went through her findings and her reasonings, she said that there was that the test for terrorism was amply proven by the Crown. Under Canadian law, terrorist activity is defined as acts that are carried out for a political or religious or ideological purpose and with the intention of intimidating the public or a segment of the population. And she said this was proven by the case, that it met the test. She said one might go so far as to say this was a textbook example of terrorist activity. During sentencing submissions, we heard the Crown prosecutor often refer to a manifesto that Veltman wrote in the days and weeks leading up to the attack on the Afzaal family on June 6, 2021. In that manifesto, he declared himself a white nationalist. He had shared his views of Muslims and other groups. He talked in that manifesto of wanting to make life, quote, uncomfortable for Muslims so they would leave the country. The defense had argued that while Veltman's views may be troubling or offensive, they didn't all add up and constitute an ideology. The Justice, Linda, rejecting those defense arguments. So again, she's saying the test was met for Veltman's crimes to be considered terrorist activity. She also spoke in her ruling quite a bit about the victim impact statements that we heard over the course of 2 days a few weeks ago. It was an emotional scene in the courtroom here over those 2 days as loved ones of the Afzaal family, friends, gave their victim impact statements, and there were also community impact statements as well. And the judge today talking about how, while those people were describing an impact on them, their statements themselves had an impact. She described how poignant and powerful it was to hear from those loved ones, and she recounted the themes that emerged out of those victim impact statements: the immense grief and pain and loss that the loved ones of the Afzaal family are feeling, how they were a beloved family, but also the fear that their murders caused among Muslims here in London and beyond. And we heard during the sentencing submissions from the Crown that sadly Veltman achieved that goal of instilling fear in the Muslim community. But she also said another theme that emerged was a sense of hope. She heard that through some of the statements, and she was saying the spirit of hatred that was on display by Veltman's crimes was met by a spirit of hope and unity, because some of the victim impact statements talked about the support that the loved ones of the Afzaal family that they felt. And Canadians expressed support for the family as well. And so she talked about how that was a consequence, really, of what Veltman did. Now, she also talked about the consequences of terrorist activity itself. She talked about how it is a destructive force, she said. It is something that has a uniquely pernicious character. She described terrorist activity, Linda, as like a cancer, saying it can metastasize and grow. How she also said that Nathaniel Veltman consumed right-wing racist ideology largely on the internet. She talked about how he didn't need to leave his apartment. He didn't join a terrorist group. He was a lone actor, and he subscribed to this right-wing ideology largely through the internet. And she had a quote in her ruling where she says the tentacles of hate can reach reach a broad audience when they're merely a quick click away. She said perhaps this case can be used as a cautionary tale. Now, okay, so main headline here, she found that his crimes amounted to terrorist activity. The other thing we were watching for in her ruling was a sentence for the attempted murder conviction, and that is in relation to the little boy that survived the attack. He was 9 years old at the time. He was severely injured, and he was left an orphan. It was his parents, his sister, and his grandmother that were killed in the attack. The Crown had asked for a life sentence for that attempted murder charge. The defense had asked for 10 years. Linda, today the justice issuing a life sentence for that attempted murder charge. It will be served concurrently with the sentences for the first-degree murder charges. So that's first life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years for each of the first-degree murder convictions, the 4 of them. All of these sentences will be served concurrently. So the terrorism designation doesn't really impact the sentencing for Veltman. It could influence what programming he might be offered while in prison. It could play a role when he does apply for parole years from now. At the conclusion of the ruling, Veltman was told to stand up as the judge addressed him and imposed the sentence. When the judge had said at the outset of the ruling, Linda, that she was finding his crimes acts of terrorism, there were tears in the courtroom. I saw some people give thumbs up to each other. So we will be hearing from some people in the courtroom when they come out and speak to us in a few minutes. But it seems early on there was indications of relief that she did find Veltman's crimes acts of terrorism. We know some in the community had been hoping for just that.
And we're certainly going to be watching that as it happens. We'll be watching that court right behind you for as people come out and share their thoughts on this ruling today. Megan, thanks for laying out the scene inside that courtroom for us as we get this breaking news in to our newsroom today. Megan Fitzpatrick in London, Ontario.